They're coming from the families of some of the 5,000 people that are on board. They have been telling their relatives of some of these conditions. One woman said that her husband said that he hopes he doesn't wake up in the mornings because conditions on board are so bad.
Yes, it's the Trump dump, where we cross the pond to get the very latest coming out of Washington. Tonight, I'm joined by US reporter Harriet Alexander. Harriet Alexander, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, hi.
Secretary of Defence Pete Hegseth has pushed back over reports that sailors on the USS Abraham Lincoln, which has been deployed in the Middle East for 250 days, are living with food shortages, broken plumbing, and there have been suicide attempts. Asked by reporters what he made of the accusations, Hegseth had this to say.
Completely misrepresented. Listen, we make sure at every ship, every crew, every captain has everything we can provide them at every single moment. Some deployments are longer than others, and I have more respect and gratitude for those sailors than anybody. What they do in those high seas and those austere conditions with less port calls, it's incredible. I mean, Americans don't understand what it's like to do that. So as someone who's not been on a ship like that, but been on long deployments, I feel it.
Harriet, where are these reports coming from?
Well, they're coming from the families of some of the 5,000 people that are on board. They have been telling their relatives of some of these conditions. One woman said that her husband said that he hopes he doesn't wake up in the mornings because conditions on board are so bad. And one of the local politicians, Mike Levin, whose constituency includes San Diego, which is where the USS Lincoln is based, he wrote on social media that there were moldy showers, that there was a lack of hot water, that people were being given half a cup of rice and 2 tortillas a day, and that the ship's doctor was so concerned about the conditions on board. He said, we need to find a port soon or else people will start to, quote, lose their minds. So, certainly there are some pretty concerning reports coming out about this.
It sounds dreadful. According to Navy officials, traditional supply hubs have been disrupted by combat actions. Do we know what the conditions are like on board this ship and exactly how these men and women are feeling? You mentioned there that husbands were telling their wives they didn't want to wake up in the morning.
Yeah, it sounds pretty dire, really, doesn't it? So what happened is that the ship set out in November. It was originally in the South China Sea, but then it got diverted to the Arabian Sea in January as part of Trump's war on Iran, and it's been there ever since. So it's a really unusually long deployment. These people are used to fairly long deployments, but this is something that's quite extreme. And it's not just the families that are directly making these appeals. Richard Blumenthal, who's a Democrat senator for Connecticut, he's on the Senate Armed Forces Committee, and he's written a letter saying that he's very alarmed about some of these reports, and he's demanding answers. Whatever Hegseth might say, that things are fine, it certainly doesn't seem that way.
And how do we know about these suicide attempts? Are these confirmed reports of suicide attempts, or is it all speculation?
Yeah, it is all speculation. There was a report of somebody who had gone overboard, and that, I think, sort of put the focus on this and on some of the conditions. And it was the Navy Times that initially reported this. And that, of course, is the newspaper for the armed forces, who a lot of the families will turn to as a first person to speak to if they want to raise issues. So it does certainly seem that there is some fire there that's causing all this smoke.
It just breaks my heart to hear that. I've had my own struggles with depression, and there is help out there. If you need help, do just get in touch with Samaritans. You can get out of this and things can get better, and it is so sad to hear that there are servicemen and women feeling that way. Are there any plans to relieve those sailors and send another carrier to replace it?
Well, this is, it's already a very unpopular war in the United States, and America takes its veterans very seriously and its service members. So this is something that I think will only serve to heap pressure on the White House to get a solution to this. Trump has made no secret of the fact that he wants this to be done. He said that there were sort of low-key negotiations. They were low-keying it. That was his phrase, because he wants to move on. He doesn't like the way that things are. He wants this all to be done partially because the midterms are coming up in November, and it's given him record low popularity ratings. So I think this is yet another sort of coin on the scale that's going to tip things in further of a quick wrapping up of this. But there is no easy solution to it because there isn't a limitless supply of warships that are able to replace the USS Lincoln if it is moved away. So there's no immediate end in sight, but you hope that they will get to port soon and give these people some R&R.
Suicidal soldiers can't be a good headline for any American president. Donald Trump's controversial immigration department, ICE, are reportedly planning to spend up to $20 million, that's over £14 million, to buy gloves that can deliver electric shocks. The gloves can deliver up to 380 volts of electricity, 3 times more powerful than the standard US plug outlet. Ouch. According to the Department of Homeland Security, the gloves could be used by officers and agents in Homeland Security investigations which target transnational criminal organisations and enforcement removal operations who are responsible for arresting, detaining and deporting people who violate American immigration laws. So this taser, Harriet, delivers 50,000 volts. Surely these are like fly swatters in comparison to an actual taser. 380 volts compared to 50,000 volts. What's the point in them? I mean, it sounds horrible, but when you put it in that perspective...
Yes. I mean, it's true that they are very much a milder version than the taser. And that's what the Kentucky-based company that manufactures them is at pains to stress. They say, look, we already have tasers out there and this is nowhere near as strong. So they say that, for instance, these gloves, if you touch someone's clothes or of their hair, then you're not going to feel it. So it's only when the glove touches bare skin that actually the impact will be felt. So they're trying to downplay this. ICE is saying that it's a useful extra weapon to have, I suppose, in their toolbox. But you can imagine that it's quite a sort of Mad Max type concept, isn't it? And that a lot of people are deeply unhappy about this. The American Civil Liberties Union has said that it's really worrying, given that we've already seen how far ICE has overstepped the mark and they would say used unnecessary violence against people, particularly protesters against this. So people are pretty troubled by it, and it's quite a startling development, I think.
But there might be people on the right, perhaps Trump supporters, who might be thinking, well, why aren't they using tasers? If we use 50,000 volt tasers on other criminals, why can't we use tasers on people who are violating immigration laws in the US? There will be people that have that opinion as well. So it doesn't really seem that this solution pleases anyone. What have human rights organisations had to say about this in particular? Because you talk there about ICE being controversial. They have been controversial. They've killed people and shot them with guns. Tasers have surely got to be better than that, whatever the voltage.
Yeah, I mean, well, they'd say in general that ICE is reckless and that it's undertrained and that they are being given these tools that they are using without due thought about the consequences. So, human rights organizations across the US are pretty alarmed at this because they feel that ICE has got too much power, that it's basically being out of control across the country. And of course, the killings of Renee Good and Alex Pretty in Minneapolis earlier this year are, were very high-profile examples of when it can go terribly wrong. But you're also right that people, who side with Trump and with his hardline immigration chief, Stephen Miller, they will think that this is very useful, very necessary, and that the ICE agents should have at their disposal every tool necessary to do what they would argue is very important legal work.
And finally, Harriet, Donald Trump is continuing his fight against daylight saving time, arguing today that eliminating the twice-yearly time change would reduce the murder rate in the country. That is an interesting assertion. Trump has urged the Senate to pass the Sunshine Protection Act, sounds very dramatic, which cleared the House last month and would keep daylight saving time permanent. Harriet, why is Trump so hell-bent on ditching daylight saving time?
Well, it basically means that there will be lighter evenings but darker mornings. And advocates of this say that it gives people more sunlight. But you'll be unsurprised to know that people who live in the north of the United States, they are none too thrilled about the idea of having darker mornings. For instance, in parts of Montana, it won't get light in the morning until 9:30 a.m., which is going to make a significant change to their lives. And they argue that it's going to be dangerous for children going to school in the dark, that it creates a whole different set of problems. It was passed fairly comfortably by the House last month, 308 to 117, but it's being held up in the Senate, and that's because there's an awful lot of opposition from these people in northern states who say we do not want this at all.
Harriet Alexander, thank you so much for your time this evening. That was Harriet Alexander, the US reporter for The Times.